today we're talking about the power of freedom. We don't usually have 27 people in here, so it's quite the spectacle. Thank you guys. I actually talked to Eugenie and I were at an event Thursday night and I said, how are we going to fit all those people in that little space? We got to figure it out. So, throughout the month of May, we've been talking about the qualities of God. And how do we live the qualities of God in our own lives? And so each week there's been a different quality of God that we've talked about. And so a few weeks ago we talked about the power of abundance, and the power of values, and the power of peace. Today we're talking about the power of freedom. Freedom is one of those bedrock qualities of God that every person seeks in their life. It is natural for us to seek freedom. I thought it was appropriate, being a Memorial Day weekend, that we talk about freedom. But it was very interesting as I was thinking about freedom. You know, freedom is one of those things that we frequently talk about in the context of someone else giving up their freedom so that we can have ours. And there's always been something, as much as I admire and applaud those who make that kind of sacrifice, there's always been something in me that feels a little like incongruent with that. And I wanted to really think about that. So you'll notice in the little card I gave you, the first point is put yourself first. And I mean that, I thought, oh my God, are they all going to read this on Memorial Day and go, what? What is she thinking? But I really had a lot of time this week to go in depth on this. And I realized, you know, Ernest Holmes says, in What We Believe In, his very first treatise that he put out on the principles of science of mind, in the very first issue of Science Mind magazine, the fifth point is we believe the ultimate goal of all life to be the complete freedom from all discord of every nature, and that this goal is sure to be attained by all. So what does that mean? How do we live that freedom? And what I realize is that we are only truly free when we put ourselves first. But let me explain. When I say put yourself first, I don't mean in a selfish or egotistical way. I don't mean put yourself first by putting everybody else aside. I mean put yourself first because you recognize that you are part of the greater whole. You are part of the greater whole, and as I say all the time, and every time I say it, it kind of blows my mind again. What is the highest and best for one person must be the highest and best for all. It is law. If we are connected, there can be no separate freedoms. There can be no separate interests. So we put ourselves first so that we can hear the voice of God as us, telling us what we stand for, how we should proceed, what to do. How many people in this room have ever done something that someone else wanted you to do while everything in your body is screaming that you should not do that? Was that freedom? No. Thank you. That was not freedom. And yet, was it good for this other person? Yes. No. You thought it was at the time because we're nice people. Because we're nice people and we are raised, you know, our parents, God love them, and I'm a parent and I've done it, but we want what we think is best for our children, or our dogs in some cases, or our nephews and nieces, or whoever it is that we are the authority figure for, and we impose what we think is best on them because we are well-meaning, thinking that we should do it. And so what that means is that children frequently learn that they ignore their own guidance and they do what other people want because in a certain context, that gives them a certain amount of freedom. You know, eat your vegetables or you go to your room. Well, you're going to eat your vegetables because that's the freedom that you want right then, is to not go to your room. But there's a bigger freedom, and that's that quality of God I'm talking about. And that bigger freedom is where we listen to our own voice. Excuse me. Excuse me. You probably hear I've been fighting a little thing here, so I'm sorry about that. Where we listen to our own voice, where we hear that own call of God come to us, where we hear it through us, not the voices of everyone around us. So when I say put yourself first, I don't mean in that selfish way that is detrimental to others, but what I mean is that we recognize and embrace the concept that when I'm expressing my personal freedom, I'm actually uplifting everyone, even if it doesn't look like it at the time. So I want to tell you a story that goes along with that beautiful song that the choir boys sang. You know, a couple weeks ago, Steve and I, we were gone at my daughter's graduation. You all know that I was absent, and Kathy filled in for me. Thank you so much. But before that trip, we went to Gettysburg in preparation for the big tour to Gettysburg in October. And, you know, we walked the battlefield again. And, you know, Steve is actually a saint for letting me drag him through this all these times. He can now probably recite all the whole tour to Gettysburg himself. But there was a story in that really struck me. And many of you probably heard it if you know anything about the Battle of Gettysburg or watched the movie with Martin Sheen as Robert E. Lee, or read the book The Killer Angels, or any of that. You know this story. But it's about a theology professor from Maine named Joshua Lawrence Chamberlain. And when the Civil War broke out, Chamberlain was a staunch abolitionist and absolutely believed in the cause of the Union. And all of his family said, you know, don't go to war. You have no military. You're a college professor. You're a theology professor. You're a man of God. Don't go to this awful war. But something in Chamberlain kept saying, if I believe in this cause, I must go. I can't be a hypocrite and send everyone else off to die because I believe in this cause. He put himself first. Well, now, did he or didn't he? But he did. He listened to his own guidance. He put himself first. And so he actually went to the college administration at Bowdoin College, where he was a professor, and said, I need a 2-year leave of absence to go study classical languages in Greece. And they approved it. And then he went and enlisted in the Union Army. Because he knew that if he told them that he was going to go enlist, they'd all try to talk him out of it. So he went and he enlisted in the Union Army. He didn't see a ton of action in the first 6 months he was there. They were at the Battle of Fredericksburg, but he was the leader of the 20th Maine Division, and or battalion, I should say. And when they got to Gettysburg, they were like out in the boondocks of the Union line. They were on this little hill called Little Round Top, and everything was happening up north, and they're at the far south end, and they were way out there. At the end of the second day, General James Longstreet decides to attack that end. There are very few men there. General Meade from the Union has to move things around, and Joshua Lawrence Chamberlain finds himself up there with his men pretty much all by himself. And he is the end of the Union line. If this huge Confederate army gets around them, they sweep up the Union, and who knows, that would have actually been a huge turning point for the Confederacy and in the Civil War. So when I say put yourself first, Chamberlain is not a tactician. He's not a military guy. As I've reiterated, he's a minister and a college professor. Maybe that's why I love him so much, is because I can so relate to people who are both ministers and college professors, you know? But he gets inspired. They're running out of food. They're running out of ammunition. They're out there hanging out on the far Union left all by themselves. He gets this inspiration. He's got the 151st Alabama coming up the hill at him in waves and waves and waves, and they aren't stopping, and they're doing that rebel yell thing, and they're scared. He gets this intuition to do something he read about in a book. Now, every other superior officer had told him previously that this was a textbook maneuver that would never work and to forget about it, but the maneuver had always intrigued him. So every time he read about it, it intrigued him, and he's like, this could work someday. There's a situation where this could work. And he would talk with the other colonels and everybody about it, and they'd be like, oh, that's just an archaic old thing. Don't even think about it. So here he is all by himself up on Little Round Top with the 151st Alabama doing their rebel yell coming up, out of ammunition, and he listens to himself first. He's like, I don't care what all these other people say. I know this will work. So what they do is they affix their bayonets. Now, think about this from the human perspective. It's not always easy to shoot someone from behind a tree, knowing that you're shooting to kill someone. That takes a certain mentality. But when you do it, when you're looking in their eyes with a sword on the end of your rifle, this takes like real desperation or guts or some combination of both. But Chamberlain orders his men to affix their bayonets and come swinging down the mountain to sweep up the 151st Alabama, mimicking the rebel yell. So the Confederates aren't used to hearing the rebel yell back at them. So anyway, he listens to his own guidance. He puts himself first. He listens to this. They sweep up the 151st Alabama. They capture 101 Confederate prisoners. They absolutely turn back the charge, and they save the day. I mean, depending on which historian you read, Joshua Lawrence Chamberlain has been credited with the entire victory of the Battle of Gettysburg in this one maneuver. It's a little more complex than that. But he put himself first. He knew what he stood for. He knew what he stood for. And then he listened to his own guidance in the face of other experts. So how many of us can do that? Because sometimes our own guidance seems pretty crazy. I mean, sometimes we get called to do things and we're like, no. You guys have heard me tell this story, several of you, if you've been here before, about starting this. No, God, I don't want a church. I think you're mistaken. I'm not supposed to start this because I don't want a church. So our own guidance sounds pretty crazy sometimes. But when we put ourselves first and we trust in our own sense, we trust in our own inner knowing, we trust that there is that divine that speaks through us, that's when we're free. When we squash it down and go do something else so that we don't have to listen to it, that's when we feel bondage. I've counseled with many people who want career change. And what they want to do is they want to go from bad to still bad. They just want it to be different bad. And when I say, well, what do you really want to do? Everybody knows. 100% of the people I counsel with know what they really want to do. But they're afraid. So going from one thing I don't want to do to a different thing I don't want to do is not freedom. We are here to make choices to do exactly what we want to do. Now, there's no guarantee that this isn't frightening. It's frightening. If it doesn't, they say, if it doesn't scare the pants off you, your goal isn't big enough. But we are free to do whatever we want when we really listen to that inner guidance. So then the second thing we have to do in order to experience freedom is we have to learn how to say no. Now, I mean this two different ways. I mean, first of all, we have to learn how to say no. We have to learn that saying no is a good thing sometimes. We have to learn that we shouldn't do everything. That just because we can do something doesn't mean we should do something. So we have to learn how to say no in that context of, gosh, is this really the right thing for me to do? Is this mine to do? Should I go this way? And not just say yes because we feel guilty or we want to please people or whatever else. So that's the first thing. I mean, we have to learn how to say no. But then we have to learn how to say no. How many of you have to get mad before you'll say no? How many of you get mad at the other person for asking and putting you in the position of having to say no? How dare they ask me to do this? I mean, I shouldn't have to. Why would they think that I would want to do it? And then when you got yourself in the appropriate tizzy, then you can say no. None of this is freedom. Because the anger itself is bondage. Do you feel free when you're really angry? How many of you feel like soaring when you're really, really pissed off? Well, I mean, flying off the handle and soaring are not the same thing. Learning how to say no is being able to smile and lovingly know that you have something greater in mind and say no. So the secret that I learned when I worked with Steve, at CSL for all those years, is the way you say no is you agree with the person. Agree with them. And then say no anyway. So if someone comes to me and says, you should come to this event on Saturday. I have two choices. I can say, I can't come on Saturday. Well, but you really should be there. There are going to be a lot of people, but I can't come. No, but it would be really good for the church if you came. Yeah, but I can't make it. Well, you should cancel whatever. You see, you've set up this oppositional arguing thing. If someone says you should come to this event on Saturday, and I say, you're right, I should come to this event on Saturday, that would be a good thing for me to do, but I can't. They got nowhere to go. Also, isn't it a principle that of oneness, there is no opposition? So when we agree, we are freeing the other person from having to dig into their position. We're freeing ourselves from defending our own position. And we still get what we want. We still put ourselves first. We still listen to our own guidance. This is what I should do. And I don't have to make anyone else wrong in order to do it. So as I wrote down that learn how to say no, I realized I don't mean learn that say no is a good thing. I think we talk about that a lot. Everybody's kind of got that, yeah, Stephen Covey, I love it. The only way to smile and say no is to have a bigger yes in mind. Yeah, we get that. But how do we say no and maintain our freedom? And maintain our freedom. Because once we dig into a position, then we always have to defend it. The best way, seriously, now let's try this in your lives. Next time someone wants to argue with you, agree with them. It freaks people out. It messes with them. It really does. They do not. They're waiting for the argument. And so when you say, yeah, you're right, I should. You know where I actually learned this? I learned this from being a parent. The answer to everything when you're parenting is yes with a qualifier. Can I have candy? Yes, after dinner. I want this toy. Can I have it? Yes, if you have enough money of your own to buy it. So you just say, so pretty soon they just stop asking, And so you say no by saying yes. And you stand in your own integrity and you stand in your own freedom. You don't have that emotional upheaval. You don't have to make anybody wrong. You don't have to defend yourself. So put yourself first. Listen to who you are and what you stand for. Learn how to say no. And then the third point of my talk is repeat. Repeat. We are ever-changing beings. We are not static. What we want at one point, how many of you want exactly today what you wanted when you were 20? Right? Yeah. And yet, we sometimes embark on our life's work as if we're supposed to always want the same things. I remember one of the greatest epiphanies I had about this. I was working in advertising. I was 25 years old, and I was asking, I was unhappy. I did not feel free at all. I felt very tied down to the job. What do they call the golden handcuffs? I made good money, and I was under a lot of responsibility, and really on the fast track to success. And this is the late 80s, early 90s. I was your quintessentially yuppie, but I didn't feel free. What did I want? So I read in a book somewhere that the way you find out what you really want to be when you grow up is you take a little notebook and you put it next to your bed, and every morning when you wake up, before you brush your teeth, before you get out of bed, before you do anything, ask yourself the question, if money weren't an issue, if I were independently wealthy, what would I spend today doing? Take a few minutes to think about it, and then write it down in your little notebook, and don't look at it. Turn the page, go about your day, and forget about it. Do that every day for 30 days. And then at the end of the 30 days, go through and you'll find a theme. So I decided at 25 years of age to try this, because I know that I'm not loving what I'm doing. So I get up every morning and I do my little exercise, and some of them are crazy. Like, if I were independently wealthy, I would fly to Paris for lunch. So some of them are clearly not job prospects. But at the end of the 30 days, I found a theme. I loved history, and I loved to teach, and I loved to be in school. So this leads me to the idea that what I'm going to do is quit my job and go to graduate school and become a history professor. It was so clear. It resonated with me. It was absolutely in alignment with my higher self. Every time I thought about it, my heart soared. Every door opened. As soon as, I did not have a single undergraduate credit in history, and yet I was accepted to every master's program I applied to. Okay, that doesn't just happen unless it's somehow divinely ordained, Everything was right in 1992. Now let's fast forward to 2001, where I've been a professor, I'm completing my doctoral dissertation, I'm looking for tenure-track jobs, and I hate teaching history. I hate it. I don't hate talking about history, and I don't hate teaching. But somehow the combination in the academic setting did not resonate with me. Well, I argued with myself forever that this can't be. I went through a spiritual process. God had spoken to me when I was 25 years old and told me that this is what I was supposed to do. And so whatever I'm feeling now about being in bondage to my history professorship must be wrong. Because freedom is what I knew back in 1992, right? No, I was a different person now. I'd survived cancer, I had a child, I'd been married, I'd had all of these things, and there was something different calling me. So I had to have the courage to stand in that place and say, you know what, just because I've spent 8 years and $40,000 getting a PhD so that I could teach history doesn't mean I still have to do it. That was a big one. That was a biggie. But I did not feel that power of that divine freedom walking into the classroom. Did I love the students? I loved the students. I actually, over Christmas, I walked into a bank and I saw a guy who looked vaguely familiar and he came up to me, Dr. Morley, are you still at the University of Colorado? You're the reason I became a history major. I was like, oh, how sweet. No, I'm not still there though, thank God. But not that there was anything wrong, not that that's a bad profession, not that the people who do it aren't great, not that I wasn't good at it. But if we want to experience our freedom, we have to continue to put ourselves first. That's the repeat part. So by the time we got to 2001, I'm graduating with my PhD and I'm looking for tenure-track jobs and I'm feeling like, sick to my stomach every time they're flying me somewhere to interview. I wasn't putting myself first. I was putting the PhD first, I was putting the student loan first, I was putting the expectations of my daughter, husband, mother, whoever first, because here I had made this huge proclamation that my life's purpose is to teach history forever and ever, amen. And now I hear I'm literally on the threshold of doing it, and I'm going, yeah, I don't think that's me. The embarrassment, the shame, the everything else that I felt, I could have stayed in bondage to that profession. I would be off probably in Eau Claire, Wisconsin right now, teaching history at the University of Wisconsin-Eau Claire, or Idaho State University, or Purdue University, or any of the places where I interviewed. And I would be miserable. But I wouldn't have made a fool of myself. But I had to put myself above all of those opinions. And then I had to learn how to say no to all of those people going, especially my mom, God love her, you what? You want to do what? You want to become a minister now? How many more degrees are you going to get? Well, one more, apparently. But we are evolving beings. This is an ongoing process. We aren't static. We aren't brought to this earth to experience the freedom of our free will, to have decided everything we're going to do in our lives at the age of 10, 15, 25, 45, 75. We are constantly evolving. And how do we know what's next for us? We listen. We put ourselves first. We listen to that within us that is always calling us to our greater good. That God life in us is always calling us to our greater good. And it doesn't care what your mother thinks is your greatest good. And it doesn't care what your spouse thinks is your greatest good. You know. And you have to trust it and put it first. That's when you are free. And then you have to lovingly, agreeably say no to everybody else who doesn't think that's your greatest good, because they don't know. You know. And then you have to keep checking in. Is this still my greatest good? Is it still my greatest good? Is it still my greatest good? And as long as that answer is yes, then you proceed forward and God will open all the doors for you, and you will live in that power of freedom. You will live in that power of knowing that you are here on earth doing what you were put to do. And as soon as you start to feel that weight, that anchoring, that bondage, that I am no longer here doing what I want to do, as soon as you get up every morning going, oh God, another day. You are no longer putting yourself first, saying no to everything else, and listening to that power of freedom. So, tomorrow's Memorial Day. What a great time to start practicing this. Because this isn't something we just know. I mean, you all know this. I'm not telling you anything you didn't know. But now we get to practice it. So take some time every day, morning, evening, both. Listen to that voice. Ask, what is mine to do? Who am I? What do I stand for? What am I here to do? And am I doing it? And if you're not, then smile at everybody and agree with them as you just do whatever you darn well want to do. I was joking with Eugene about a piece of music, and we were talking about getting a track for the center here, and I said, well, let's try the reasonable way of getting it first by asking the author for the track. And then if not, we're going to try I'm going to get my way no matter what damn it way, and we'll work around it. You do that by knowing what you want and say no to everyone else who doesn't agree with you, because they don't know. They mean well, they love you. That's why they're being such a pain in the rear end, is because they love you. But you get to choose if they're really going to hamper your freedom or not. So practice that. Practice. Next time somebody says no to you, practice agreeing with them. And like I said, it'll blow their minds. It's great. And then keep doing it. Every day, every week, every month, every New Year's. Sit down every New Year's and say, am I still on track? Am I still doing what I want to do? And that's how we get to experience that power of divine freedom. So let's pray. So how good it is to know that we are absolutely free. That there is a life and a power and a freedom in us that wants us to have our good, that wants us to do as we choose, that has given us free will so that we can exercise it. How good it is to know that that is a quality of God that we are here to express and experience in every moment. And so as we come together on this weekend where we celebrate freedom, I know for each of us that we now have a new thought about our own personal freedom. I know that we now have a new connection to that divine life and that divine mind that is always calling us to make the choice, to take the step, to do the thing that enhances our own personal freedom. And as we enhance our personal freedom, we enhance everyone's. Because what is good for one must be good for all. And so just with this knowing that I accept for each person here that we have a new understanding of this divine law. We have a new understanding of this quality of God. We have a new understanding of who and whose we are. And I accept for each of us that we leave here today transformed with a new idea about life, a new idea about freedom, a new idea in our own personal consciousness about how we show up on this planet. And I know for each of us in the day and in the week and in the weeks and months ahead, that we take this new understanding with us and we project it outward knowing that we are always one with God. We can never be separate from our good. And from that place, we are free to do and be and have whatever it is we choose to do and be and have. And so it is with great gratitude to know that freedom is our birthright. To know that God is always with us, that God is connected to us, that God is our source always, in all ways. It is with gratitude for this and so much thanksgiving that I just know for each of us that all is well. We are evolving beings, ever present to the good. And so recognizing this and giving grateful thanks for it, I just release, I let go. I know that this must be done. It is law. That divine life works on my words, makes them so, and it can never come back void. And so with this conviction, knowing it is already done, I let it be, I release it, I let it go, I proclaim. All is well, now and always. And so it is.